Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin, wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulil Karim wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa min at-tabi'in sunnati wa ala yawmiddin. All praise be to Allah, and may Allah's peace and blessings be on His last Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and on all those who follow the path of righteousness until the last day. Assalamu alaikum to all brothers and sisters in Islam, and a warm and pleasurable welcome to all our non-Muslim guests. With God's mercy, we have been able to organize this lecture series of Dr. Abu Amina Bilal. This is indeed a very rare opportunity for most of us. Dr. Abu Amina Bilal is a prominent international lecturer and author, and I'm sure most of you do know him. Very briefly, let me tell you something about himself. Dr. Abu Amina Bilal was born in Jamaica, and he grew up in Canada, where he accepted Islam in 1972. He completed a diploma in Arabic and a BA from the College of Islamic Disciplines at the University of Medina in 1979. At the University of Riyadh, following graduation, he completed an MA in Islamic Theology in 1985. And in the Department of Islamic Studies at the University of Wales, he completed a PhD in Islamic Theology in 1994. Today, the lecture would be on who is God. It would be an enlightenment to all of us to find out the true characteristics and how does one sincerely search to find the one and only supreme power. Before I hand over to Dr. Abu Amina Bilal, let me tell you very quickly about some house rules. First of all, we would appreciate if all brothers can switch off their cellular phones. Number two, question and answer session. There will be a session for question and answer at the end of the lecture. And we would like all brothers to present their questions in written form than asking orally. We would really appreciate if all questions which are asked pertain to the topic that is being presented today. I now call upon Dr. Abu Amina Bilal to present his lecture. Assalamu
Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala Rasulillah. All praise be to Allah, and may Allah's peace and blessings be on the last messenger of Allah. Who is God? This is a question which human beings throughout the world need to find an answer for. Societies, human civilization, as far back as one may go, has always had at its center a God. God. In recent times, a new element has developed among human beings, wherein the very existence of God is questioned. They claim that God is the figment of human imagination. It's a figment of human imagination. In other words, human beings created God. So we need to address it, because this way of thinking has dominated Western civilization today, and with the globalization of Western culture, we find this way of thinking, secularist way of thinking, dominating world culture as a whole. So it is an issue which should be addressed, an issue which we should reflect on and come to some conclusions as to its truth or its falsehood. Because if one says that God, the concept of God, was created by human beings, then that means that religion is also a fiction. It is something people have made up, rites and rituals around a non-existent God. So, what is the evidence that those who claim that God is not real, what is their evidence? What do they use to support this argument? First and foremost, they raise the issue of the many religions. There are so many religions around the earth, each one claiming that it is the true religion, etc. Then, what is the basis under which one could then claim that God really exists? This division, this multiplicity, seems to imply, with the different ideas that people are holding, seems to imply that God, being perceived in so many different ways, could not possibly be true. So, they say that those who claim that there is a God should bring the evidence for God's existence. Because their multiplicity is apparent evidence to his non-existence. The belief in God, from this perspective, is illogical. It is what is referred to as blind faith. When we go from religion to religion to religion, the followers blindly believe in God without any logical proofs for God's existence. It's just blind faith. Whereas they say, we logically conclude that there isn't any God. We are basing our understanding on science, mathematics, or whatever. This is the correct view. In the past, in ancient times, when people's knowledge of the world was very limited, they created this idea of God to explain the things they couldn't explain. Where did this come from? Why did that happen? Now, we have learned the reasons behind things. Why do volcanoes explode? Why does the rain fall? Why is it snow in some places instead of rain? Why are there earthquakes? What are the stars? All of these things which in the past people gave explanations for, which science later on proved were false. Belief in God is a part of all that whole system of misunderstanding the world around us. A lack of sufficient knowledge led people to invent the idea of God. So, logically, there is no God. The explanation which most anthropologists, psychologists, sociologists accept for the development of this belief in God is based on Freud's, Sigmund Freud, who is the father of modern psychiatry. He gave an explanation of where this idea of God came from. He created a very neat little story about it. in his book called Interpretation of Dreams, which he wrote in 1899. He said that the belief in God is a product of what he called the Oedipal complex. Oedipus, in Greek mythology, is the king of Thebes, who unwittingly killed his father and married his mother. This is the story in Greek mythology. Now, Freud, he identifies in the developmental stages of children between the ages of 3 and 5. You'll find children, boys, they become jealous of the father when the father and the mother sit together. You'll see the little boy coming and trying to sit between them. You know, this is something which is observable, not something that is affected. It's a fact. So he, because he tended to explain everything in terms of sexual drives and desires, and stuff, explain everything. So he said it has to do with this desire on the part of that child for a woman. So he said, the first family, which evolved from the apes, because of course Darwinism is at the root of this belief that there is no God. Darwin found the explanation for how human beings got here without having to resort to the concept of God. So Freud explained that when the first family evolved from the apes, and the boys in that family became jealous of the father, they killed their father to keep their mother for themselves. After killing the father who used to go out and hunt to bring the food, who used to protect the family from harm, wild animals would come and try to attack them or whatever, he would protect the family. They felt his absence, he was gone, he was no longer there. And fear overwhelmed them. And in trying to deal with that fear, they developed the belief that their father was still alive. He wasn't dead, or they had killed him, buried him, whatever. He was still there in the sky looking over them. Right? The imaginary father, as children at some stages, will develop imaginary playmates. They'll be playing and talking about who they're playing and talking with. Some of the kids, they'll have imaginary playmates. So suggested that this was the way in which the idea of God developed. That after losing the father, they invented the idea that the father was still alive, somewhere in the sky looking over them. He would still protect them. He would still help them get their food, etc. And from that came the idea of God. It's a story. No story. No evidence, although they like to talk about scientific experimentation. We know, we have researched, we have established, but what is the proof of this story? There's no proof. Durkheim, another leading psychiatrist, he had another story. But Freud was more, his story was more popular, so it became the one most commonly quoted. What is the proof for it? There is no proof. So, the explanations which are given are not particularly logical. Anybody can weave a story, make up a story to explain. And their story is no better than anybody else's story. So if they want to reject the idea of God creating Adam and Eve and, Adam and Eve knowing about God because God revealed that knowledge to them, etc., and they say, that's just a story. No, he said. It's not inferior to your story. It's not inferior to your story. There are more people who believe this story than your story, if you want to call it a story. So, the so-called logical explanations are very simple. How logical they really are. Furthermore, when the evidence is brought, they bring also that religion fosters enmity amongst people. The wars, how many people lose their lives in all these wars? So religion. If we got rid of the religion, we wouldn't have any more wars. Every time you see an incident take place in the world, people always point the finger at religion. The Gulf War, Afghanistan, religion caused war. The reality is that the great wars, World War I, right, where some 8 million people died in these battles. Where was religion? Was it over religion? No. No religion was involved in that. That was just power, materialist efforts to control different lands, a desire to expand and to control, expand empire, etc. It has nothing to do with religion. World War II, 55 million people died. Did that have anything to do with religion? I mean, this is after they got rid of the idea of religion. We don't even have religion in our politics and things like this anymore. Where was religion? No. The great wars and all of the lives have been lost in huge numbers. It has nothing to do with religion at all. This is a false claim. And then, if we look at the explanation that they give for why things are the way they are. Because if there's no God, we should have a way of explaining why things are the way they are. Well, we have explained about the rain and the earthquakes, the volcanoes and all this. But now, if we get down to the nitty-gritty, the basic facts of life, when you ask the atheist, why, in your case, you are successful, you have a nice home, a car, your business is successful, life is going well for you. And there is another person, who is your classmate in school, who went to school, he had the same opportunities you had, and he graduated, etc. But look at him now, he's a total failure. He has no home, he has his family in pieces, his whole life. And you ask him, well, why is your life this way? And his life is like that. What does he say? He says, well, it's my good luck. My good fortune. Things came for me this way and that way, and it didn't come for him. It's his bad fortune. Bad luck. For the reality is that this term fortune comes from fortuna, Latin, for the goddess of chance. The goddess of good luck. So, they are worshiping a God. Though they say there's no God, they are worshiping a God. They believe in a God. They're calling the God luck or fortune. Because when you go through that person's life, all the various incidents in their life, from one to the other, they'll say, good luck, bad luck, good luck, bad luck, good. So their lives are governed by good luck and bad luck. This is just another name for God. But one which they don't have to feel any kind of obligation towards. Like we speak about gravity. Gravity causes things to fall, etc. But nobody thinks, okay, we need to worship gravity, we need to ask gravity to do anything for us, because it's a blind force. So similarly for them, good luck, bad luck is a blind force. Okay? They're divorced from having to deal with it, meaning to find out what does it want, because it has no consciousness, it has no being beyond being just merely a blind force. So all of their logical explanations take them back to belief in God. In fact, everybody believes in God. It's just that they call God by other names. They give other explanations, but still the concept of God is there. And what you find today, especially amongst those who have denied God's existence externally, openly, is this deep-seated belief in life on other worlds. You find in these societies they will spend huge amounts of money to build these huge radio telescopes and point them off into space, waiting, and they've been doing it for 30 years, 35 years. Build huge telescopes in Central America, in Australia, they all have them pointed off into space, waiting for the day when somebody out there is going to say, hello. But they've been waiting and nobody said anything. Just that. They got so frustrated that they made a movie called Contact. You know, in that movie, there's somebody looking on the telescope and they heard a hello. Because it's not happening in their lives. So to keep that feeling alive, they have to make a movie about it. This is the Hollywood explanation for existence. And when you think about the idea of the UFOs, this is also something which is linked to it, the idea of the UFOs, you find that the concept of life, UFO being unidentified flying objects, meaning spacecrafts with alien beings coming into our world, right? Circling around the world, coming down and picking up people and things like this and experimenting on that. And they made a whole series called The X-Files, all about that. If you look at the root of that, you see in it this desire to bring meaning back into life again. Because once you deny there's no God, and you propose the idea that there's got to be some other life elsewhere in the universe, because this all took place by chance. That's all by accident that life existed here. So by accident it should exist elsewhere. But we really haven't had any communication, factual communication. So the idea of the UFO started up like in the 50s, late 40s, 50s. This is when secularism, the idea of denying God, etc., started to build and to expand. So this became the explanation to bring meaning back into life. Because if it is that the skies are populated by superhuman beings from other planets, etc., and they are coming to our world and circling around and looking at us, etc., it means that they must be important. For them to come from all the way across the galaxy and come and look at us. They want to see what is going on in our lives. So importance is given back to us. So a sense of importance again. But in reality, when we address the explanation of life on Earth as being a product of chance, chance, which they say began with the Big Bang, right? The whole of the universe began in a very small, concentrated point which exploded. A huge, massive explosion which just sent matter flying off into space, and then the the process of its flying off and crashing with each other, these worlds were created, star systems and solar systems were created, etc. But if you think about it, that's like, as one thinking scientist put it, it's like believing in the possibility that if you were to drop bombs into a junkyard, you have a junkyard where you just old junk, broken up cars, whatever, all these things you keep in the junkyard. People sell, that's all the junkyard. If you drop bombs in there, one after the other, eventually a bomb is going to create from the explosion in the midst of that junk a Rolls Royce, which will come rolling up, its door swings open, keys are in the ignition, all you have to do is just get in and drive off. What are the chances of that? Common sense tells you 0. There's no possibility of that happening. But look, if you keep doing it, use enough time, it's going to happen. Or another way they put it is that if you put 100 monkeys into a cage and you give them typewriters and you give them an infinite amount of time, eventually one of those monkeys, beating on the keys of the typewriter with his toes and his fingers and his nose and his head and his ear or whatever he's banging on the typewriter, eventually one of them is going to type out the whole Quran. There's the United typewriter. The whole Quran is going to type out the whole Quran. What do you think about that? What's the chance of a monkey banging on keys at random, typing out the whole Quran? 0. But then if you do it enough times, there's going to be 0 the first time. No, it's 0 the first time, and it's 0 every time. Because the chances of it happening the first time is no less, no greater than it happening the second time, or the third time, or the fourth time. Each time they begin, the chances are 0. Their arguments are illogical. And what we find in religion, in revealed religions, God addressing the concept of his existence from design. For God points out that design indicates a designer. This is human experience. When we see design in anything, we automatically conclude there must be a designer. When one goes walking down the beach and you see a footprint in the sand, you don't stop to think, how amazing the tide came in and settled into the sand in such a way that it created a footprint. As soon as you see that footprint, you assume somebody walked there. Somebody was walking on the beach. You don't want to be logical. Something is so far-fetched. You go automatically to someone having been there. Design indicates a designer. That is logical. This is what the whole of our existence points towards. This is why those who claim that design is by accident, their argument is illogical. It is illogical to think that design is going to come by accident. It is logical to believe that design is a product of a designer, because everything around us points in that direction. Furthermore, human experience in terms of belief in God points towards the existence of God also. No matter how far back you go in time, the historical records that we have, ancient civilizations, modern civilizations, primitive civilizations, advanced civilizations, wherever we go, people believing in God, a supreme being. Though their understanding of that being may vary, there's changes, etc., that relationship of that being to human beings may be, but the idea of the supreme being is throughout human history, throughout the world. And normally when you see something consistent, scientists look at something which repeats itself over and over and over again, they assume that this thing must be fundamental to human existence or to what they call nature or whatever. It's fundamental. It has a reality. And a few years ago, in the United States of America, in Berkeley, California, some doctors studying the human brain, doing research on patients who had epilepsy, schizophrenia, and other neurological disorders, they found, in fact, that these people, whenever they had the overwhelming feelings about God and so on and so forth, which would happen certain times during their seizures, they found that there is a single spot in the frontal lobe of the brain which the activity seems to be concentrated in every case. So they declare, and this is in the newspapers, that the brain is hotwired for belief in God. And they call that spot the God spot. So, there is a God. All of the evidence points to the existence of God. God is not a myth, not the figment of human imagination. It is a myth that those who claim that God doesn't exist have created it. They're the ones who created the myth. Now, if we accept the basic idea of the existence of God, now, God that He created, because basic to the existence of God is creation. The world came into existence by that God. Either God created the world and revealed Himself to that world, or He created the world and left it to run by itself. No. Who is the true God? The one who created the world and left it to run by itself? There are people who hold this belief. They are referred to, in technical terms, as deists. So for them, religion is made up by human beings. This is the myth, the religion. But God is God. Where those who believe that God created the world and revealed His will to human beings, they're called theists. No? Who is the true God? Who is God really in this picture? Well, when we say that God has revealed His will, it means that He has informed us of the purpose of life, why we are here, what are we here for? He has given us instructions. Those who say God created the world and left it to run by itself, they're saying that God is not created so. We, as human beings, have to figure out for ourselves whatever purpose we may find. In the end, we are no different than from the atheists who say there's no God. Find your own purpose in life. And if you think about it, in human life, if we find somebody who creates a machine with wonderful moving parts and this activity and this machine, and you go to ask the inventor, what is the purpose of this machine? He said, really, there's no purpose. We're going to look at this person suspiciously. This individual belongs in a hospital. He has spent all this time creating this machine. It has no purpose. Somebody comes and knocks on your door. You open the door. What can I do for you? There's nothing. Well, why are you here? No reason. What do? We take the telephone and call the hospital. The police come. We have to go to the door there. Take him away. The idea of doing things without purpose and reason is something that we associate with the insane, people who have no wisdom in their actions. Furthermore, if we send children to school and we don't tell them what they're supposed to do at school, give them the reason for their being at school, what do you think they're going to do? You think they're going to just march all into the classroom and sit down in front of the teachers? Okay, teachers. Do you think they're going to do it? Or are they going to go to the playground, get on the swings and the slides and just enjoy themselves? That's what they're going to do. They're not going to go and orderly sit in the classroom. No. So without knowledge of purpose, they will waste their time. And to do that, we would say, is unreasonable, not wise. Similarly, a person has a factory. He hires workers, makes contracts with them, and then he doesn't tell them what to do. They come to the factory, what do you think they're going to do? Go in there, get behind the machines and all start working. They'll go to the cafeteria, sit down and drink tea, chat, gossip, whatever. They're not going to go and do constructive work if you have not informed them of what they're supposed to do. So in the same way, we look at these kind of actions as being unwise. To attribute that to God is foolish. Is illogical. To say then that God is not even as wise as we are. We who pride ourselves in doing things for reasons and giving purpose to things, we're implying that God is inferior to ourselves. So the argument that God created the world and let it run by itself is a weak argument. It is not consistent with the understanding of God. And of course, their argument as to why would be all the confusion amongst the religions. Again, we'll go back to the atheist argument. All of these different religions out there, if God told us why we should be here, what we should do, how we should worship Him, etc., then there wouldn't be all this confusion. All the different religions, each one worshiping different ways, saying this one is wrong, and having all the different beliefs. So it must be that God is good. But is that the only conclusion? No. There are two conclusions possible. One, you can say God never told. Or you can say God told. One of those is correct, and the rest is incorrect. Yes, they're all claiming they're correct. So either they're all wrong, or one is right, and the rest are wrong. So that is the logical explanation. And especially when we consider that God created one human race, it doesn't make sense that He would then give different elements of that human race different religions, because that is just confusion. If there are one people, they have one need. And what makes sense is that there should be one that in fact, all of these religions that we see in the world today, they are degenerations from the original religion. Who is God? God is the one God. Not the three in one God, or the many gods, but the one God. And that one God reveals to human beings who are one race, one religion. And that one God, the Creator, is not himself his creation. Because though we may find in certain religions the idea that yes, there is one God, but somehow this idea of one God becomes confused with his creation itself. So I dare to say that God is his creation, and the creation is God. There's no distinction really between God and his creation. Or they say God becomes his creation to reveal his will to the creation at different points in time. So you have incarnations of God. Or it is that God never became his creation. That he in fact is the creator. And the idea that he became his creation contradicts him being the creator. Because to become the creation means that you are in need of a creator. A created being, if God became a created being, whether he became, in some religions they believe that he became a fish, or a cow, or a human being, or a tree, or a stone, or whatever. The belief that God became his creation, became a created being, implies that God, as a created being, was in need of a creator. So the true understanding of who God is the creator who is himself uncreated. He doesn't become his creation. He is God. And everything besides him is his creation. Now some people, because of the fact that they try to make God like his creation, in that when we create things as human beings, I make this podium here. To make it, I go to the forest. I cut down a tree. I saw it into planks. Then I heat some rocks, get iron out of it, make screws and nails, and I beat it together and I make this podium. Now when I made this podium, I made it from something which already exists. So when we create, we don't actually create, we manipulate. We take something which already exists and we manipulate it into different forms. We call it a table, a chair, a building, or whatever. We are manipulating things which already exist. But we don't bring anything into being which did not have a previous existence. So people thinking in this line, they said, well, okay, in the beginning was God. God is there in the beginning. Now, where did he create things from? He must have created it from himself. So he took a piece of himself, right? From his head, he made a class of people. From his arms, he made another class of people. From his feet, he made other people. He made the world from himself. This is making God like his creation. Similar to those who try to explain how God is three in one, He is three and He's one. They will say, for example, that, you know egg, they are what they call the egg theory. You know the egg? It has a shell, it has a white, it has a yolk. All of it together makes one egg. We say, this is how God is. We say, oh, that's an egg. Maybe your God is an egg, but our God is a God who is indivisible. He's not divisible into parts. So you can have a God who is the Father God, another God who is the Son God, etc. No, we have one God. Not like His creation. Now, the only where, or the only place, where that correct understanding of who God is to be found in Islam. It is in the religion of Islam, the religion of submission to God, the religion which was given to the first human being on the face of this earth, Adam, and his wife Eve, and to successive generations. That same religion was given. In Arabic, the term is Islam, submission to the will of God. Whatever languages the prophets of the past spoke, and the people spoke, they were saying, it was the term used was in their own language. God never really revealed a religion which He called Confucianism. The isms, all the various isms, named after people, after places, after tribes, etc. God didn't call religions by these names. People made up the religion, the true religion of God, which God revealed to human beings, is the one of submission. Submission to the will of God. Doing what God has commanded in human life. God revealed Himself through scriptures which were brought by messengers, prophets, and demonstrated by the prophets, explain how this message should be implemented. But now, if we are to understand God, who God is, among Muslims today, we find a problem. Because though the pure message was brought by the last of the prophets, Muhammad, may God's peace and blessing be upon him, in time, the mass of Muslims have deviated from that original message. So you find amongst them concepts of God which are like the various religions which are out there. When God commands people to worship Him alone, you find people putting intermediaries between themselves and God. They may call these intermediaries saints. They're given them special names. Awliya, Qutub, Awtad, variety of different names are given. But the reality is that this was not the religion revealed to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is something which people made up in time. And that's why it becomes very similar to the other degenerations from the true original Islam found in different parts of the world. Very similar to the practice, in some parts in Rome, etc., where people believe in a whole series of saints who you call on when you go on journeys, you call on them for this and for that and the other. You find, unfortunately, Muslims today do this very thing. Muslims having all kinds of distorted beliefs about God and about human beings. You have those who believe that Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was created from the light of Allah. And he is essentially divine. He is not actually human. He only appeared to us to be human. There are books written about him called the Shadowless Prophet. And he walked the earth, and when the sun shone on him, he had no shadow. Everybody else had a shadow. This is a being who was not a regular human being. He appeared that way, but he really was not a human being. Though Allah says very clearly in the Quran to Prophet Muhammad, may God's peace and blessings be upon him, to tell the people, قُلْ إِنَّمَا أَنَا بَشَرٌ مِثْلُكُمْ. Say, O Muhammad, I am only a human being just like the rest of you. إِنَّمَا أَنَا بَشَرٌ مِثْلُكُمْ يُوحَى إِلَيَّ أَنَّمَا إِلَهُكُمْ إِلَهٌ وَاحِدٌ. The only difference is, it was revealed to me, I received revelation, that your Lord is one God, one Lord. This is the distinction. He was a human being. Unfortunately, as I said, we have Muslims who believe somehow he was superhuman. They believe, some of them believe that he is present in their gathering. Whenever they have a gathering, if they're having dinner, they may even lay out a plate and leave a chair aside and eat. Whenever they gather, he comes and sits there. He's all over the world. Or they believe that he knew the future. He had knowledge of Allah. All of these kind of beliefs are beliefs which go against the true teachings of Islam. So if one wants to know who is God, one has to go back to the original scriptures. One has to go back to the Quran. The pure scripture which has not been changed from the time of its revelation, 1,400 years ago. And receive the communication of God directly. One has to go back to the Sunnah, the way of the prophets. May God peace and blessings be upon him. The way in which he described God and described our relationship to God. To know who God is, we need to go back to those sources. We cannot rely on what Muslims are doing today, because unfortunately they have strayed far away. So, God is real. He is not a figment of human imagination. Everybody believes in God. Even the ones who say there is no God, they believe in God. And you will find them expressing that belief when? At the time when they have no way out. They're in a building which is on fire. They're at the top floor. There is no way out. They cannot escape. The building is going to be burned up. They can see the building burning up. No one can say to them, what do? Do they just say, that's life? Just may as well sit here and get burnt. No. You will find them raising their hands and screaming, oh God, help me. The one who always loves you is God. But at that time, when he felt or he could see there was no escape, no way out, he then screams, oh God, oh God. Everyone believes in God. But we need to know who Is he the God who becomes a man, or an animal, or his creation? Or is he God who is truly God, not a part of his creation, not becoming his creation? The truth is that God is not his creation. Everything besides him is creation. He commanded it into existence, and that's where and why it comes into being. He has given purpose to that existence. He has given direction to human beings. He has shown them the way to live through revelation and through prophets who brought and explained that revelation. So my brothers and sisters, my friends who have come, this is the thought that we need to leave here this evening with. God, the true God, is one God, and there's nothing beside him that is God. And because of the fact that there is no God beside him, no one or no being who controls what takes place in this world beside him, then it means he is the only one who deserves to be worshipped. He is the only one who we should be worshipping. None besides him. To call on any besides him is futile. It is foolish. Now somebody will say, well, you know when I call to Saint so-and-so, and this saint, my prayers are answered. People like it. Some people say, when I call on Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you know, when I have real problems in my life, I call on the Prophet, and my problems will solve. So let me say, well, what about those who call on other human beings? They call on other human beings, they call on, and they're very answered. Some people call on stars, and they're very answered. Some people call on the trees that they worship, and they're very answered. So then what? Who is answering the prayer? Of course, when you say the person who prays for a tree, and his prayer is answered, we say, no, it's not the tree answering the prayer, it's God. So then, why do we want to say that it's a human being who's answering the prayer? It's God. So the consequence of knowing who God is we are obliged to worship that God. That's the consequence. That's what we have to deal with. We have to worship God. Now, the question is, should we worship God in the way that we feel? You know, how we feel, emotionally. If we feel attracted to God, should we not worship him how we feel, from our hearts how we feel, when we feel? Or should we worship him in specific ways, in specific times? Well, those who say it's better to pray to God, turn to God in prayer, when we get the motivation to pray to him, as opposed to praying 5 times a day, that the Psalm says, there's 5 times a day when you must pray to God every day. They say, better we just turn to God when we feel like it, when we are driven internally, as opposed to ritualistically. Now that may have a certain logic to it, but if you stop and think for a minute, maybe that person doesn't get the feeling to pray today. Maybe for a week he doesn't get the feeling. Maybe a month. Maybe a year. Maybe years will go by and never get the feeling. It's very busy. Life is very complicated. You got all this, responsibilities, etc. And the only time he turns to God in prayer is when? When calamity strikes. Maybe a lot in his life that he turns to God in prayer. What is the difference between him and the atheist who we talk about before? Who when he's trapped and calamity strikes, then he turns to God. No difference. Because turning to God in worship doesn't just mean calling on God when you have a need. That's not what it means. It means regularly turning to God in order to maintain a consciousness of God in our lives. So we're aware, we keep that awareness of God in our lives. So when Islam describes prayer 5 times a day, that is the basic minimum. It doesn't mean that you don't pray to God besides that. No. Between those times, you turn to God. You make supplication anytime. So that's just a basic minimum to keep remembrance of God in our lives. We need at least that much so that we can be described by God. So belief in God and knowing who God is requires us to worship God. And worshiping God is not as we feel to worship God. Because if it is as we feel as our desires tell us, then we have not submitted to God. Submission to God means following the instructions of God. So, the answer to the question, who is God, lies in the clear understanding of God presented in Islam. And worshiping that God as was prescribed in the original teachings, not as human beings feel, so that with every century or every half a century, people are adding things from here and there and everywhere. So the religion that we end up doing is nothing like the religion which the Prophet brought. That is misguided. That is becoming just like the other degenerations. No. Worshipping God means worshipping Him the way that He prescribed. Not the way that we invent. Because we have another idea. So, for example, when the time for prayer comes, Salat al-Jum'ah, for example, in the time of the Prophet, what happened? He would come into the masjid and he would say, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And he would sit down. At that time, the muazzin would make the adhan. That's what he did. There were no quote-unquote salawat which were sung before, as we find in masjids here in Sri Lanka. The practice is when you go over the rest of the Muslim world, you don't find it, you only hear it. So we have a Sri Lankan Islam. There's only one Islam, the Islam which Prophet Muhammad brought. There's no Sri Lankan Islam, no Egyptian Islam, no Arabian Islam. There's only one Islam. So it's very important for us to realize that, to accept that we accept the correct understanding of God and the obligation of worshiping of God, we must understand at the same time that we must worship God the way that was prescribed by the messenger of God. And as God said in the Quran, Allah said in the Quran, "Al-yawma akmaltu lakum dinakum." Today I have completed for you your religion. The religion was complete in the lifetime of the Prophet. It means that it is not for us to add to that as time passes. That is the religion that God prescribed. Not what we find today in many parts of the Muslim world, which is a product of the cultures of Muslim peoples who are associated with Islam and have a right to that. For example, in Jordan, you have a practice known as honor killing. Also a practice. Honor killing. What is honor killing? It means that a member of the family, if he finds a female in the family, whether it's a mother, a sister, a daughter, who has some relationship with a man, whether it's on the telephone, or she's seen talking to this man, or walking with this man, or something like that, which will bring dishonor to the family, it is the duty of one of the members of the family, maybe her brother, or her father, or her son, it's his duty to go and kill her, to save the honor of the family. They call it honor killing. Now some people see Muslims do this with people. Islam teaches Muslims to kill their female relatives who step out of line. That is fact. It's not Islam at all. When we go to the original true teaching of Islam, that act is not called honor killing, it's called murder, for which Islam prescribes the death penalty. So we need to go back to the original teachings, to know Islam as it was revealed. Because it is only in following Islam as it was brought by the final messenger of God that we may know God as He is, and not have a misunderstanding and distorted understanding of who God is and what our relationship with God should be. So I want to go on to what?
Very enlightening presentation. I think all of us agree that there are many things Brother Bilal made us realize, and many things which we need to reflect, and in fact to learn and begin to practice in our lives, inshallah. Now we will open the floor for questions. All who are interested in asking a question, you could present it written. There will be papers circulated, solicited as well as others. Whoever wishes can request for piece of paper and write a question. We would suggest that we start with questions pertaining to the topic, and you would first address those. If time permits, we would consider other questions, inshallah.
Can please explain how the Islamic concept of God is different from religions who claim that God with us? How is it different from the Islamic concept of God? There are religions who claim that God is within us and you pray to the God who is in you.
Well, I basically explained that earlier, that God is distinct and different from His creation. This is the fundamentally different concept held in Islam. Once we say God is within us, in each and every human being, then there is no distinction between the Creator and His creation. We are in fact then gods. And this is a belief held by some. But in that way, the Creator is His creation and the creation is the Creator. This is something which goes against reason and it goes against revelation. Okay, we have a written question here. What do you think about cloning, where men have tried to take the place of God Almighty? Well, cloning is manipulation. Cloning is not creation. Human beings can never take the place of God. They cannot create. As Allah said in the Quran, if all of humankind got together, the human beings and the jinn, if everybody got together in this world, they would not be able to create a fly. A fly which is considered to be something so insignificant, despicable, you swat them, you kill them. They're nasty. It's nasty to the thing. But if we tried, using all the technology and all the knowledge we have, we could not create that nasty little fly. Creating the fly means what? It means you take chemicals. The fly, if you break him down chemically, he is made up of different chemicals. Carbon, hydrogen, etc., etc. You just take these proportions, you put it in a test tube, you spin it all around, and out pops a fly. Even that, we cannot. So, cloning only represents manipulation of the world in which we live. Knowledge and power which Allah has given us. In the past, we used it in the vegetable kingdom to make roses. People were cloning from a long time back. Process of making a particular type of rose which repeats itself exactly in the same form, etc. So on. So this has been done from ancient times. We did that, as I said, in the vegetable kingdom for our own benefit. And our technology allows us to do that now in the animal kingdom. And some people are trying to do that with human beings. And it is quite possible that they may succeed to some degree. But the fact of the matter is, they will not be able to create. They cannot create life from non-life, meaning you take chemicals, put it together, and produce a living being. No. Human beings will never replace God. What is the best answer to give a non-Muslim who asks, who created God? Well, the best answer is, no one created God, because God is not created. That is the answer. God is not created. So to ask, what is the definition of God? He is uncreated. To ask who created God is like asking, can God die? When we understand God to be an eternal being, a being who has no beginning and has no end. So no, we don't ask who created God, because if God were created, then the one who created him must be God. And then you say, well, who created that God? And the one who created him must be God. And then who created that God? And you keep on going. If there is not a God who is himself not created, then there is no beginning of things. God, the Creator, is without beginning. And everything besides him is creation, created beings, they have beginnings. So the answer is, no one created God. Brother Bilal, you said that the Prophet ﷺ had no idea about the future. then how would he say many hadiths or statements about the future? Now, what I said is people were saying that the Prophet, ﷺ, he knows the future, meaning he knows the future in its entirety. As he knows the past, he has the knowledge of Allah, the knowledge of God, which is not bound by time. Past, present, and future is all one. That knowledge he does not have. Whatever he did not have. Whatever knowledge he had of the future was information revealed to him by Allah. All of the prophets of God were given some information about the future. This is part of being a prophet. So, when we speak about the Prophet Muhammad knowing something of the future, it doesn't mean he knows the future. The future means the whole future. But he knows something based on revelation given to him by God, not from knowledge of his own. Is there something about aliens in the Quran? Well, Allah said that He has created things we know and things we don't know. What we don't know is alien to our knowledge. Relative to us, it is alien. But the idea that there are other beings out there who have intelligence like we have, and they are able to choose between good and evil, and they are flying from across the galaxy, and they're going to come to our world and interfere with our world, and we're going to have the war of the world and all that kind of thing. Star Wars. This idea is false. We don't believe it. Why? Because such an event would be a major event in human history. And the Prophet, may God's peace and blessings be upon him, informed us from revelation revealed to him of the events of the future. The major events of the future is informed us. If he could tell us all about the Antichrist, Dajjal, about the God and the Magog, Ya'juj and Ma'juj, he's going to tell us about the beasts who will come from the earth and speak to us. He will tell us about the wars and the Mahdi and all of the different things that have been revealed. Surely he will tell us about the aliens. The other possibility, if we want to talk about the aliens, is the jinn. They are alien to us in the sense that they're not visible normally. But they may become visible. And we know from the various bits and pieces of information which the Prophet ﷺ informed us about the jinn, is that they can take different forms. So if you want to believe in a green man who comes out of a spacecraft, got a big head and a skinny little body, well, yes, the jinn can take that form, and there you have your alien. Some people say, who obey and call them as saints, who they obey and call them saints, that you should ask from them, and Allah will give you whatever you ask for. Could you please explain that? Well, as I said, that is like making God similar to us as created beings. If we want to talk with the President of Sri Lanka, we want to get something done. We need a favor. We cannot go to the President's residents go knocking on the door and walk in and say, listen, I'd like to have a little chat with you. We can't. You need to go through some ministers or some, intermediaries, some people who have connections, who can carry your request through the channel till it reaches the president. And perhaps then the president will respond. Now, if you try to communicate with the president directly, you can't get to our house, go and have a chat with him. You write a letter, it probably won't get answered. So, the best way, if you want to communicate, is to go to these people. So they say, well, God is like that. Well, no, that is human beings. God is not like that. God says in the Quran, Ud'uni astajib lakum. Call on me, and I will answer your prayers. There should be no one between us and God. That is the correct teaching of Islam. That was the practice of the Prophet. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He worshipped God directly. He taught his followers, his companions, to worship God directly. The early generations, they worshiped God directly. It's not until later generations, when people started to adopt the practice of intermediacy, where there were intermediaries between themselves and God, from the other religions that were around them, this is when that practice began and spread amongst Muslims. What is the religious concept of God, or the religious concept of God that Sai Baba teaches, that encompasses all religions? Well, Sai Baba teaches that he is God. So, right away, from Islamic perspective, he is teaching false teaching. He is promoting the idea that human beings can be God, that God becomes a human being, the avatar, the incarnation of God. God is walking on the earth. But he's going to the bathroom like everybody else. This is not God. This is somebody telling a lie about God. In the saying in the Quran, that it was revealed in the revelation of God, how would you refute persons who say it was written by Muhammad and he borrowed from the Old Testament and biblical figures? Well, one can make that claim, assuming that Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was not a prophet of God. And one could say that about all of the prophets of God. One could say that about Prophet Jesus. That what he spoke about, what he taught, were bits and pieces which he had taken from the earlier prophets. And Prophet David, and Prophet John, Yahya, and the other prophets, and all of them, because all of the prophets spoke of the same things. There are shared concepts in all of their message, because their message was one message. So one could make that claim. However, the reality that we have before us is that the Quran is a pure text, unchanged. It was revealed to an individual who himself didn't know how to read and write. It was revealed in Arabic. And the earliest translation of the Bible into Arabic was done many years, many centuries later, after the death of Prophet Muhammad. And the language which Jesus spoke and the other prophets spoke, Jesus spoke Aramaic and the other prophets spoke Hebrew, and texts were written in a variety of other languages. It would have meant that the Prophet, may God's peace and blessings be upon him, would have had to have been a master linguist, knowing so many different languages, and be traveling all over the Middle East, gathering bits and pieces from here and there to put together the Quran. But we don't have any record of that taking place in his life. So this is just a false claim. The Quran itself has within it proof that this was not from Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Perhaps we'll talk about some of that in our lecture on religion and science. There are many ordinary non-Muslims who, although they do not pray 5 times and fast, etc., still do a lot of good in the world. How do such non-Muslims stand in the eyes of Allah? And what is our relationship as Muslims to such non-Muslims? Well, Allah said in the Quran, هَلْ جَزَاءُ الْإِحْسَانِ إِلَّا الْإِحْسَانِ. Is there any reward for good other than good? Yes. Those who do good will be rewarded by God. However, those who do evil will be punished by God. And the greatest possible evil that a human being can commit is to worship other than God. So no one may speak of the good that people may do. And people may do good for a variety of different reasons. The ultimate evil is to worship other than our Creator, is to call on others who cannot help us, to deny the very purpose of our creation. That is the greatest evil. So when they stand before God, they stand having committed the ultimate evil. Though they may have done certain good in their lives, they will be rewarded for that good. But the ultimate reward will only be for those who have truly believed. Those who have truly believed. Even Muslims. People who call themselves Muslims. Their parents were Muslims. Their grandparents were Muslims. They had a Muslim name. There will be among those people those who will not enter paradise. Because Islam is not inherited. Islam is not inherited. Islam means submission to the will of God. One cannot inherit that. Submission is a spiritual act. The human soul decides, chooses to accept the commandments of God and live in accordance to those commandments. We cannot inherit that. So, those who know the truth and do not follow it, they will be in a very bad position before God at the end of this world. Those who did not receive the message, they didn't know. It never reached them. They died as children. They were insane. They were retarded. They were deaf, dumb, and blind. There are people in the world who we can say the message of the messengers of God did not reach. What a thing. Is God going to punish them because they didn't believe when the message didn't reach them? Well, Allah said in the Quran, وَمَا كُنَّا مُعَذِّبِينَ حَتَّى نَبْعَثَ رَسُولًا. I will not punish anyone until a messenger has been sent to them. So, according to Muslim belief, as explained by Prophet Muhammad, may God's peace and blessings be upon him, that for those people who did not receive the message in this life, who have an excuse before God, such people will be brought back before the final judgment. When the world ends, in that same period, those people who did not receive the message will be brought back. And at that time, a messenger will be sent to them. And they will be brought back with their faculties, their ability to reason and to judge and to understand. And a messenger will be sent to them who will explain about belief in God, submission, etc. Then they will be instructed by that messenger to enter what appears to them to be a blazing fire. Those who obey the messenger, submitting to the will of God, will go on to paradise. Those who reject the messenger, reject the commandments of God, they will then go on to hell. They will be judged and sent to hell. So everyone will have the message brought to them, and they will be judged accordingly.
Will you be kind enough to give me the source of that hadith?
Well, there are a number of narrations of this hadith. I don't remember the exact location in which books. In Ahmed, Musnad Ahmed, one of the narrations is in Musnad Ahmed. But if you'd like the details of it, you can email me in the Emirates, and I will send you the complete references for the different narrations of it. But if it is authentic, has been authenticated by the scholars of hadith. Most Muslims do not pray the 5 prescribed prayers, but they claim they love Allah. What is their position in Islam or in the sight of Allah? Well, Allah said in the Quran, "In kuntum tuhibbun Allah," if it is that you love Allah, "fattabi'uni yuhibbukum Allah." Follow me, and Allah will love you. Follow me meaning follow the Prophet of Allah, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Allah will love you. So the instructions which Allah has given, if we love Allah, then we obey those instructions. We recognize this in our day-to-day life. Somebody says to you, "I love you, brother. I love you." But every time you ask that person to do something, they say, "No, can't do it." There's always an excuse. You want to say, "What kind of love is this? The person doesn't love me." Really? If we can understand that on such a basic level, love involves obedience, then with regard to God, it is more obvious. As I said, submission is not something inherited. Love is not something we can claim unless we have fulfilled the conditions of love. First of which is obedience. As you are aware, this is a Buddhist country, and Buddhism says that you have a power within you, within which everything knows the good and the bad you commit. In your next life depends on this. The good and the bad you commit in your next life depends on this. How would you disprove this belief to a Buddhist or convince them of the one God, Allah? Well, we believe that each and every human being has a knowledge of the good and the evil. It states it in the Quran. فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا. God says that He has given knowledge of good and evil to every soul. So that is true. Now, the claim that our next slide depends on following the good and not the bad is a correct claim. It's what we believe also. However, that knowledge which is within us, that knowledge has been reinforced by messages sent by God to human beings, so that we may understand correctly what is the good and what is the evil. This is the belief that Muslims have based on revelation. A prophet came and revealed that. Prophets came before and revealed the same message. Those who claim otherwise, we have to ask, well, what is their evidence? What is the evidence that they have to say that this is not the case? If the religion teaches people to worship the messenger, Buddha is worshipped. Jesus is worshipped. Then this is not worshiping God. This is worshiping God's creation. The correct understanding of God is missing here. And if you open the door to worship God's creation, why stop at a human being? Why not an animal? We have other religions that worship animals. So, that door, once you open it, it leads ultimately to the worship of everything. The true understanding of God is the one which leads us to worship God alone and not His creation. How different is the definition of God in Judaism and Islam? Well, the understanding is very similar, meaning that Islam, which was given to Prophet Moses, has remained more intact among the followers of, or those who claim to be followers of Prophet Moses today, than it has in the case of those who claim to be followers of Jesus, or claim to be followers of other prophets of the past. And because of that, the concept of God in Judaism is quite similar to the concept of God in Islam. The only difference is that in Judaism, religion became an exclusive club, a private organization, only for its members. So God became, as he's referred to in the Old Testament, as the Lord God of Israel, the private God of the Israelites. The God who is described as repenting to human beings for the things that he thought to do to them, repenting to them. God becomes their personal God, who does jobs for them. Like the genie, when you rub the magical lamp, the genie pops up and tells you God's creation. Well, God is treated in a similar manner. He is a servant of the people. He comes down and he wrestles with Jacob, gets into a wrestling match in the Old Testament with Jacob. And Jacob is beating him in the wrestling match. And he gets tired. He gets tired on the seventh day. After all the hard work he has done, he gets tired, like human beings. He needs to take a rest. See, this is the distortion of God. Though the concept of the oneness is there, they have attributed to God human weaknesses. This is the main area of difference with regards to God. And also with regard to the messengers of God, they do not conceive of those messengers as being chosen individuals who were examples of righteousness as guides for humankind. Because they attribute to the prophets of God the most heinous of crimes, the most corrupt of practices. This again is a distinction. Though there are prophets carrying the same names, Muslims believe in Prophet Abraham and Moses, Jacob, Joseph, David, etc., etc., how they are perceived in Islam as described in the Quran, further elucidated in the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They are chosen by God to be guides to humankind, guides in righteousness, not guides in corruption. So the scriptures of the Old Testament have been distorted so that the image of the prophets is one that may be worse, involving worse activities which are prohibited even in the Ten Commandments. We find the prophets doing the very things which God said don't do. The prophets are described as committing adultery, fornication, going to prostitutes, all kinds of things, terrible things, committing incest, worshipping idols. All of the things which are prohibited in the Ten Commandments we find in the Old Testament. Judaism and Islam is that the attributes of human beings, the weaknesses, have been attributed to God. And the difference between prophets in Islam and prophets in Judaism is that the weaknesses of corrupt human beings have also been attributed to the prophets. So instead of being beacons of righteousness, a light of righteousness in the darkness, they become darkness themselves in their practice, misguidance, a justification for the worst of sins. How do you answer someone who argues with you stating that rebirth has evidence? Well, we have incidents in societies where people claim earlier lives and describe events in earlier lives. Now the question is that in and of itself evidence that that person lived an earlier life? No, not necessarily. Because that information may have come from sources unknown to you. Simply because it was unknown to you doesn't mean that it becomes proof that the person had earlier life. We have an easy explanation for it. We know that the jinn, the parallel world of beings that are like human beings in the sense that they have a choice of good and evil. There are believers among them as well as disbelievers. That some of them have the ability to enter into our dreams, to put thoughts in our minds. That incidences from the lives of others, because every human being also has with him a qareen or a jinn that is assigned to him, an evil jinn, who makes evil suggestions and who lives along with him and doesn't die when he dies. So that information of your life may be passed by that jinn into your dreams as a child, and you have one day thoughts about another life which people can only assume came from you having lived another life. But if one understands the world of the jinn, then we know where it could easily have come from. So the fact that people may state things which could be interpreted as one having lived another life, does not in and of itself mean that that actually took place. A person under hypnosis may be given information, and later on they may talk about things or say and do things which they had no knowledge of prior to information being fed to them under a state of hypnosis. Question, how do I convince my family to give up innovation in the religion? Innovative practice. How does one convince one's family? Well, one has to have the family accept the Quran in its entirety, and then take them to the verses of the Quran which prohibits innovation, and command Muslims to follow the instructions of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then we take them to the instructions of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which further prohibits in detail the adding of anything to the religion. And if they have accepted the Quran, and they have accepted the Sunnah, or the explanations of the Prophet Muhammad, then they can reject the innovation or the bid'ah. But if they have not accepted the Quran as it was revealed, or the Sunnah which the Prophet Muhammad communicated to us, but instead they hold on to custom and tradition, and they're locked in traditionalism, emotionally locked, then there is no way to convince them, because they're following emotion, they're not following reason. And emotion blinds people to reality. So we have to get them to return to reason, to stop and to think, to reflect. What is the Quran? What is the Sunnah? How was that Quran and the Sunnah understood by the Sahaba, the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? So when somebody gets up and says, okay, the Quran tells us that we should celebrate the Prophet's birthday, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we ask them, well, where in the Quran does Allah say that? They say, Allah said, إِنَّ اللَّهَ وَمَلَائِكَتَهُ يُصَلُّونَ عَلَى النَّبِيِّ يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا صَلُّوا عَلَيْهِ وَسَلِّمُوا تَسْلِيمًا. They quote this verse. Indeed, Allah, the angels, send praises and peace on the Prophet. All you who believe, do the same. Is it here it is? We say, no, it isn't. I said, that's what it means. We say, no, it doesn't. Well, how do we decide what it means? We need to go back and ask, did the companions of the Prophet Muhammad understand it that way? They never celebrated his birthday. So they didn't have that understanding. Do you mean to say that you understand the Quran better than the companions of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? That's arrogance. It's arrogance. So where we have a situation where people are caught up in innovation, we need to bring them back to the sources of Islam. We need to get them to give up their blinding emotional attachment to tradition, and to stop and think, to reflect,
to use the intellect which Allah has given them, for which they will be held accountable, and to read the Quran with understanding, as Allah said, أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ أَمْ عَلَى قُلُوبٍ أَقْفَالُهَا. Will they not reflect on the Quran? Will they not ponder about the meanings of the Quran? Or are their hearts locked up? See what has happened? Emotion locks up the heart, so a person cannot ponder and reflect. When this is what Allah has instructed us, to ponder and reflect on the meanings, to understand the communication which Allah has given to us. Not that we just read it like parrots on a daily basis or on Fridays or whatever. We just go through the ritual of reading the Arabic text. We don't understand a word of what we're reading. Our hearts are locked up. So we have to get people back to that understanding of the Quran, accepting the Quran as guidance, accepting the Prophet Muhammad as being the guide, and accepting that the understanding of the guidance and the intent of the guide was best understood by his companions. In this way, we can help them leave innovation and come back to true Islam. I will answer one last question. And this relates, we have a number of questions which came off the topic, but addressing the World Trade Center bombing. And actually this is a topic that we will cover in a lecture. We have one lecture on, I thought we had one lecture on terrorism and Islam. Okay. We have a limited audience discussion on terrorism, so okay, we can address this point here. Was the World Trade Center bombing a justifiable act if it was done by the state? Of course, it's something we're not absolutely certain of. We have accusations being made. But the people who did it are all dead. They can't even find their body parts. Though some of them claim that in spite of the fact that the airplane blew up, the people inside were incinerated. They can't even find their body parts. The black box with which those planes would tell us what happened are damaged and burnt up. But somebody's passport went out of his pocket and they found it 2 blocks away. Intact. We have some stories which really stretch the imagination. But if we say that this act was actually committed by Muslims, or those who call themselves Muslims or consider themselves Muslims, and again, when we read the descriptions of these individuals, as they say, before they went on the plane, they went to the bar, they were watching women striptease, drinking alcohol. Can we say these were good Muslims? Again, question marks. But if we say there were Muslims involved, does Islam justify those acts? Is it considered a part of jihad? Is it legitimate Islamic struggle? No. Islam does not support that act in any way, shape, or form. That act was an act of terrorism. It is not from Islam. I know some Muslims, in ignorance, may think that it was a blow against those who were, arming Muslims in Palestine who provide the guns and the bullets and all these kind of things, so we're getting back. No. This is not Islam. That is not how Islam conducts struggle. We have a principle. Some people say, well, okay, you have in the Quran an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. There is the basis. We say, no, that is not what is meant. It's in the Bible also. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. But what is meant by an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth? It means if you knock out my eye unjustly, I have the right to have your eye removed. I may accept compensation, monetary compensation, or I may insist, and the court will have your eye plucked out. An eye for an eye. You knock out my tooth unjustly. Not in self-defense, but unjustly. You attack me and you knock out my tooth. Then I can either accept compensation or I can insist that you have a tooth, a similar tooth extracted. You knock out the incisor, I cannot say pull out the molar. Knock out the incisor, pull out an incisor. You kill me, then you are to be killed. That is the eye for the eye and the tooth. It does not mean that if you kill my mother, or my daughter, or my sister, or my brother, or my father, or my son, I can now go and kill your father, your mother, your brother, your sister, your... No, it's not eye for eye, tooth for tooth. If you kill my mother, what is right is that you be killed. Not that I can go kill your mother, saying I'm getting back with the revenge. It's not in Islam. If a man kills your mother, he is a murderer. If you kill his mother, you are a murderer, and you will be killed. So we don't have any justification in Islam for that act. So let us not be taken away with emotion. Emotionalism, as I said, is blind. Where Muslims feel that they are attacked internationally. We are the victims around the world. Terror is being unleashed against us. And that is true. But does that justify us unleashing terror against others? No. No. Islam forbids terrorism. That is unleashing violence against civilian populations. If somebody has taken up arms against you, Islam permits you to take up arms against them. You fight the soldiers. You don't go and kill civilians. That is not the method in which war in Islam is conducted. Islam has rules for everything. War is not just hit out at the enemy anyhow you can. So somebody will say, any American anywhere you find here, kill it. It's not Islam. So Islam does not justify that act in any way, shape, or form. And anyone who praises that act, he or she shares the mentality of those who did the act. Those who did the act, they are clear terrorists. Those who praise the act think like terrorists. Let us not be mistaken about that. This was the last question. I personally would like to thank you for being here. I hope that some clarity has been made in your minds concerning who God is, whether from a Muslim perspective or a non-Muslim perspective. I hope we have some clarity. Who is God? And the questions that we have looked at afterward, I hope they further serve to increase that clarity.
couldn't take all of the questions. We had to prioritize pertaining to the topic. Some questions we left out because we had subjects being presented on those topics. Others, I think, through other questions, those were addressed. Final note, today was a such presentation and we will continue for the next 1 week. Tomorrow the lecture is scheduled at SPS Jack in the hall. The topic is usury and insurance. It is a very relevant topic for most of us. In fact, I believe that we have little guidance in that territory in Sri Lanka. Please do bring your friends and Muslims, non-Muslims, whoever may be for the program. We are having a special ladies program, and inshallah that will let the program scheduled for tomorrow morning at our Muslimas for ladies only. Sisters, if you wish, you may come along with your friends and attend this program. It is scheduled at 7 o'clock at our Muslimas. The ladies program is done by Sister Moita. She is the wife of Dr. Bilal. Fine, that is all. Let me close the show for today.